Hello, good morning, everyone. We are going to talk now about the two tools which we think are really important within the kind of work that you would like to do in the platform, because they have to do on the idea of exploring data. This means the data that's already within the organic city facility provided by the different cities, but also data that you might add through your experiments. We're going to talk about two separate modules. So the first one is the Asset Discovery Service. This is the REST service that you can use to access all the data, all the assets that they are on the organic city facility. So we can say it's like the gateway to the organic city data. On top of that API, we built a front end which is called the Urban Data Observatory, and this will cover it later. So it's interesting for you to know that this is an API which is used both internally and externally. This means that this is an API that you'll be using in your projects, but that we also use. So there's going to be always an ongoing development onto it. If you look at the basic documentation, we just explain the basic functionalities of it, which, as you might understand, they have to do about browsing, filtering data by the kind of data it is, by who provided it, by the location it has, etc., and reviewing this data. So if you go to the API documentation, you'll see on the API documentation page within the Organic City APIs that you'll have all the methods available on this API. You'll see that at the moment the API is just a GET API, which basically means that the only method that we are using is to request data. So think on this as an API that you just use to request data onto the system. Later it's going to be cover other endpoints and other APIs that you can use when you want to push data to the system. So that we can somehow think of it just read on the API, so it's really safe. You won't crash the platform if you start playing with it. So if you go on the documentation, you'll find mostly that the API is designed around the idea of filtering and browsing assets. The data model that we use, it's mostly, you'll see that there is some of it which it's strictly based on NGSI version 2. So if you already work on NGSI APIs, you'll see that it sounds familiar. But some other ones, they follow a more minimalistic approach, so that they are more lightweight. As for example, the GeoJSON endpoints, where you can search about locations and you'll get back and request as a GeoJSON format, so you can just import it directly into a map engine as Google Maps or Leaflet, etc. So I recommend you to browse these and look at all the methods that we have available. For example, if we just want to filter an asset, for example, you'll see here different ways of looking at asset by the last time it was updated, by the field ordering it, sorting it. If we just go, for example, for another kind of search, we can, for example, think on the geosearch. In the case that we just want to look for longitude, latitude, and radius, and so we can perform dynamic searches. So in a moment, we will see examples about how do things work.
Guillem, sorry for the interruption. Can you zoom in a little bit in the browser?
Yeah, sure.
Just to have a...
It's okay like this?
Oh, I think now it's perfect. Yes. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Let me know. It's important to understand that this API that you are seeing here, as many of the other APIs are going to be presented today, they might require authentication at some time. So it's something that's going to be covered also later. But just keep in mind that even they are open for certain kinds of methods for retrieving specific information which is private to a specific experiment, etc. Then you'll need to follow the authentication procedure that's going to be covered later on, and which is a standard for all the APIs, which means that once you do it for the Asset Discovery API, you'll know and you'll be able to use the same procedure for the rest of the Organic City APIs. So as you can see, if you look at it, as I was saying, it looks there's a lot that you can do with this API. So to make it simpler, we just prepared a few examples that might help you to look at how you can use this API. So we basically, if you look at the examples, we basically created 3 examples that they use JavaScript front-end modern technologies to show the possibilities that these offer. So you get a more clear idea of how you can access and how you can browse the organicity assets building your own tools. So if you go here and you open the CodePen collection, you'll go straight to this page where there are the 3 examples I'm going to be showing you today, which are in fact are also documented on the page that you just saw. So the first one that we're going to be looking at is the special query. So how do we do special queries? So as you can see, there's the dedicated endpoint, which is called Assets GeoSearch, where simply you can look by city or by longitude and latitude and radius. So it's quite easy to perform a search if you want to know the asset specific location. If you run the query on a browser or on a simple on viewer, you'll see the data returns. And the particularity of the calls is that they use a call. Look at how this can be done. You'll see that with really a few amount of code, you can start playing with the API. So let's look at this example here. That's a map where do we see a few assets around display. So if we change the view and we look and we go to the editor view to see the code that's running behind this short example, you'll see that what you have, and I'm going to zoom a little bit to it, you'll see that what you have here on the right side is the only code necessary to display these assets onto a map. So you see that, oh fuck, crashing.
Yeah, I think the client of Guillaume crashed. Let's wait a minute.
Sorry, it seems that my connection muted.
Yeah. Now it's fine, Guillaume, because there was some pauses in the audio. But
okay, where? Yeah. Okay. Where did I stop?
I think let's recap in the JavaScript part. Also
okay,
magnify a little bit the browser there because the fonts are too small.
I need to zoom more, you think? Yeah.
Yes, yes. And also please paste the link to the chat because
yeah, sure.
Maybe the persons can join there and see the example.
I'm pasting this. Just a moment. So here there is the whole documentation. So you'll see that's the same page I have right now open. And so if you go to examples, we are following the first example. So we are following the spatial queries, what's on my screen. So going to the example I was just showing you, sorry, here it is. Simply refresh the page. Do this properly after I zoom in on my screen. We just want to show you that the API basically offers you data on standardized formats that you can really connect quickly to a standard libraries and interfaces. In this case, for example, as I was explaining you see here how we just ask for assets close to, in this case, the city of Patras, and it looked for the closest assets and just put them on onto the map. You can see that the only query we are performing to the platform is this one, and that the amount of code required to put together all this map and all these markers that you see, it's really a few lines of code. And I think this is important for us, so you really don't have to spend that much time writing connectors for the things that you want to do. Let's look at other things that you can do with the API. So we are looking at the spatial queries. Okay, now it's time to see how we can use the API to do incremental search. So many times you will know exactly what you are looking for. You want your users to be able to quickly browse assets, and so a way is basically performing a search, like a keyword search. So we support incremental search, and I'm just going to show you in a moment how this works. So this is the only also a method that we'll need to call, which is the metadata search. And if you see here, if we just do a test, we can just go here and, for example, say transport. Is it right that my screen isn't updating?
No, it's not. Can you search
Okay,
again?
please. I think you need to make me a presenter if you want me to. Okay, no, thank you. Okay, so I'm sorry because I was talking and you were not seeing what I was showing to you. Screen?
Yes, now we can hear you also.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm just going to recap, and I'm really sorry, just for the ones that were missing these. We were here before at the special queries. Okay, the link to access these is already onto the Discovery. Okay, and if you go to the if you visit the example on CodePen, it's the example I was just commenting, and I just wanted to show you the few lines of JavaScript that you need to build something like this, thanks that the API used JSON format for spatial queries. Now I'm going to move to the incremental search, as I was showing you before. And so for the incremental search, the importance here is how, as I was saying, you can just use the API to perform keyword queries into asset names and asset attributes. And so I just want to show you, for example, here, if we just go around these, and you can, for example, just say, look, I want to look for London and transfer assets, and you'll see how quickly you get these back. So all these, of course, on the documentation I showed you at the beginning, and so what I'm doing is just demoing for you so you see a little bit better how it works. Let's look at an example that uses these so you see better the potential of using the incremental search endpoint on the API. So for example, here I have just in a small front, for example, just like, I don't know, bike, and it's quickly searching for the bikes available. So I can just, for example, add a bike. Let's also now look, for example, for transport London, and you'll see how quickly the API is finding results from it. You'll see also that you don't need to fulfill completely the name as it's happening here. I just type trans and it's getting the whole name. So if we go to the view and see how this is implemented, let's go to the editor view. You'll see here that basically that's the code required to build the interface you just seen. That's an example that, as you will find explained on this page here, it's using Angular JS and Angular material. So I think it's a good example for some of you if you want to explore these functionalities in terms of how you build incremental search using our API, and in this case using Angular, but I think the core concepts can be used on any other framework that you might like to use. Let's move forward on to the last example. For the last example, we want to show you how simply you can just request the assets for a site. So let's imagine that we are focused on London and we want just quickly to have a way to get an overview of all the assets that we have in the city of London. So that's the only query that we'll need to do. As you see here, I'm just going to run it. I can just type London, and you'll see I get the response for all the assets that are in London in this case. And how can I use this? Well, I think this is really, it's a good method, so you get just a quick overview of what's on the site, and this might be focusing on a specific for your experiments. If you want to see a quick example of how this is used, we can look, for example, here. As you see, the only thing we are requesting here is it's the same method that we just called, and let's see the kind of things that we can do with that, for example. So I'm just going to load it in full page and wait so it loads. So you see here, this is, for example, we just loaded a bunch of assets from London and asked it on this example to just group them by the asset type. So you can see how quickly with a single endpoint we can request, as you see, 5,000 assets from the city of London and start building interactions with them. As a way to finish, of course, and you'll find this in the documentation, you can always access a dedicated asset. No? So in this case, just click on one asset, and here you can see that's how you access a specific asset as it's on the documentation. So in this case, the asset and the ID of the asset. So this will be, at the end, the model that you'll be looking most of the time, which is a complete model of an asset. But after you've seen, the important is not the model of the asset. The importance for us is also how you look and search for assets. So hopefully the short demo showed you a little bit the possibilities that you'll have through the Discovery API. Now we're going to move to the second module, to the second tool, which is the Urban Data Observatory. That's the piece of code, let's say, that we built on top of this API in order to turn this into a web front end that allows you to perform some of the things I show you now on a graphical interface. Sylvia, my colleague, is going to present this. And so just you want to talk to Sylvia? Okay, Evangelos, could you make Sylvia presenter, please?
Just did.
Can you mute?
So Sylvia, now she's going to show you the Urban Data Observatory. It's important for you to realize that because this is the last step onto the chain of data processes that we have within the Organicity platform, it has a lot of interdependencies. So you'll see that some functionalities that she might be showing that requires some fine-tuning that's going to happen in the next days. When we finalize consolidating all the data connections and modules that happen inside the platform. All what we're going to see now, it's based on the API that we just discussed, so anything that you see there, it's possible to do it by your own using the Asset Discovery API. So Sylvia, all yours.
Hello. Okay. So this is the first thing that you will see when you enter the Observatory application. It's basically a map where you see markers indicating the sites of where assets have been federated. So we have, for example, Santander, London, and we have Patras. And as you will zoom in and out, the assets cluster around the map. And as you go deeper in the map, you start seeing the single assets. And so it goes on, for example, and so on. So when you click to a single asset, you have all the information for that asset. You have, for example, if the asset is offline, where it's located, and some other, and let's say, well, we can call these tags, but in reality they are information that are contained within the URL of the assets itself. And you see it here, for example. You see Patra, which is the city in this case, and it's in the URL, and so on. On this area, you have some information about the data contained by the assets that is sent to the platform. For example, you have power consumption in this case, you have the position, you have the electrical current. And where this will be available, you will have also historic live data for the assets. So you will be able to filter in a date range and see different time range and data series. And also you will be able to compare different kind of data between each others. On this part of the asset, you will get a way to like and rate assets, and this will go into the way the system would eventually over time suggest you new assets you would be interested in. I don't know, maybe you might have some questions later about how you browse them and how you search, and but really all the assets will be similar, and as the platform will be popular, that you will start seeing more assets and more different data popping up simply on the platform. I'm showing just another asset in this case, always in Patra, similar information. This one is in Santander, for example. And then you can also search for assets, for example. We can type transport and London, and you start having location, for example, and as you start having other assets. And here the URL is displayed, so you can click on an asset, you will be taken to that asset. This asset has slightly less information. Okay, yeah. So for example, you just see a little bit of the location and some other information, but not much. You can also log in, and when you log in, you basically take into Organized accounts, you do login, and you're taken back to the Discovery service, to the Observatory. And all the data is basically fetched from the API, but in case where the assets contain time series, there will be different data sources.